Midlife crisis is like a perfect hero's narrative. You meet a character, you fall in love with them, they doubt themselves, they buy a Porsche, they fuck somebody half their age, and then they come out of it with a newfound love of who they were in the beginning, right? But I was 18 when I had my first existential crisis. That's a very different experience. Like, I can't afford a Porsche. They won't let me fuck somebody half my age. I mean, you wouldn't want to if they did, but it's nice to have options, you know?
Anthony Junot is a hilariously real stand-up comedian and host of the Highbrow Drivel podcast. And for all you Londoners out there listening, Anthony is putting on a special encore at the Pleasance following a sold-out run at the Edinburgh Fringe. One day you're a student at a protest, and the next you're a 30-something middle manager who still doesn't know what you want to be when you grow up. The middle bit is a show about realising you've become an elder millennial. Check out the link in the description below for tickets. So, hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I have the pleasure of being joined by Michael Diamant, who is a social activist for new traditional architecture. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. So, I first came across your work, as I mentioned, when we first got in touch, after I saw a video of you discussing sort of the ridiculousness of attempts at like green architecture that gets rebuilt many times. And then sort of delved further into your work and started really falling in love with a lot of the concepts you were proposing about classical architecture over modern architecture, and just your Twitter account is fantastic. So I'll be as I said, pulling up some of the images and stuff from it as we talk. But just to give like a framing for the conversation for people who maybe don't know what classical architecture or modern architecture or modernist architecture is, why don't we start by like defining these two terms, and then we can sort of dive further into like how we arrived at this being the overarching sort of theory of architecture and the accepted schools of thought and that sort of thing.
Yes, of course. The terms that I use, the modernist architects, that the overwhelming majority of architects, they will deny that they exist. They will try to talk about styles, but it's not about styles. It's about different schools of thought. So there is broadly something called modernism, and the term modernism have been applied to different things through history. It's also opposed to our style. But when we're talking about modernism, we're talking basically about a school of thought that rejects all previous wisdom, all previous experience, everything, just, starting from scratch, and then it has mutated gradually. But it's more defined what it is not. It's chaos. It's every man or woman for himself, trying to reinvent the wheel and being terribly afraid to ever look back at what people have done previously. So that is modernism. That's a broad category. It's not a style, it's a category. There are infinite amount of styles within modernism. And then on the other side, you have the classical tradition. The classical traditions, and now we speak of the Western or European Greco-Roman classical tradition. There are other classical traditions. There's the Islamic, there's the South Asian Hindu, there's the East Asian. But in this conversation, we speak about the Western or European, I would say Greco-Roman European classical tradition. And it's a school of thought and a framework and an architecture philosophy, how you create a facade, how you create a building, what are important aspects, proportions, part symmetries, facade division, baseline. That is based more or less, it has its origins in the Greco-Roman thinking, but it's not one style, it's an unlimited amount of styles. It's just a framework, how you design a building. And from this framework, architects has during, the past 2,000 years, broken the rules here and there a bit, and they created new styles within this framework. But each new style is as beautiful as the previous style. It's different, but equally beautiful, because it's the framework, the basic framework and understanding how you create facade is the same. It's been the same for the past 2,000 years. So these two schools of thought, well, modernism obviously won after the Second World War, I would say. It definitely won. But now what I am doing, and hundreds of other people with me, we are fighting for a revival of the classical tradition, not a specific style. You can create new styles from this framework, you can reuse old styles, but the framework, how you create a building. So that is broadly what these things are. And it's very, very important, and I will stress this, and it's important for all the listeners, to differ between modern architecture and modernist architecture. We're not against modern architecture. A classical building built today is as modern as a modernist building. If you say that we are against modern architecture, semantics, then if we're against modern architecture, then we're in favor of unmodern architecture. And that's, that's you're self-defeating yourself. So modernist architecture, one school of thought, and then you have the classical tradition, one school of thought. Not styles, frameworks, how to design a building. One framework is based on experience, what works, what we like. I speak, of course, of the classical tradition. What we like, the proportions that our eyes find good. You hear things like human scales, proportions, part symmetries, things that we biologically, I say this with 100% confidence, and now neuroscience has proven this. It's like objective beauty, because there is a part that is subjective of beauty, but the majority of what we find beautiful is objective, and it's based, on our natural thinking, our savanna upbringing, readability of our environment, that we can fast read our environment, and that it's stimulating but harmonic at the same time, and the proportions, you can instantly feel if something has good proportions or bad proportions, and it's in our DNA basically. It's not that we're evolved to like buildings, it's just that the classical tradition imitates nature in its scale, and therefore we find it attractive. Modernism has broken all these rules because it had to, because it's everything old is bad. So they try to reinvent the wheel all the time, and it's one crappy building after the other. And gradually it has, morphed now. In the beginning it was some kind of rational, functional rationality, like treating people like robots. You build a house, it's storage for people. It's not a home, it's storage for people, and then they should effectively be moved to where they work, and everything is just functional. Today it has mutated to narcissism, pure narcissism. The most important adjective of a modernist building is that it's new. And when I say new, it has never been built before. Good is, not an important attribute of a building. The most important is that it is new. So if we use a computer and we bend it a little bit like this, it has never been done before. Therefore, it's great in the eyes of modernist architecture, and you win great prizes for it. Never mind that most people, regular people think is bad or crap. You don't build for them. You build for the other people with, the stereotypical look, because the stereotypical look is true. These, black glasses with big frame and pullover. It really is a look, and it's like, are you a sect or something? because it really, really exists, and it exists in every country. They always have this special glasses and this pullover, like they are some kind of avant-garde that understand things that we peasants, we don't understand. They can see beauty in ugliness, and we are too shallow to understand this. They fill themselves up with so much nonsense, and it's everyone knows about the story about the emperor's clothes. The emperor's new clothes. The emperor is naked, and then and there is no better, things to describe the whole modernist architecture scene. The emperor's new clothes. Everyone praises things that are just both bad functionally and bad aesthetically and bad urbanism, because it's new, and everyone bends their backs over and over to. When you read, architecture competitions, and you see this ugly box, and you see how they described it, fantastic contrast between the light and the brutal concrete, and it gives a sense of room. It's just nonsense. And they have been so effective in shutting down all discussion about our built environment until now.
Yes, well, I'm very pleased that you're doing it. I mean, I've watched this sort of architecture like take over my home city to an extent, and
Mm.
it's like these like sheer brick faced, like always this horrible, like at least in Belfast, always this horrible like orangey slate color, but with like
Mm.
holes for windows, and it looks like a prison. And
Yeah.
I'd never understand how architects are getting paid to design this.
Mm.
Like it looks like someone
Yeah.
just
It.
put a block on CAD and like took out the
Mm.
windows and that's it.
Mm. And you have the right to believe your eyes because you are not alone. An overwhelming majority of people look and think exactly the same. And how do I know this? Well, now we got studies. They have made polls. They have made neuroscience research about it. And also, if you check at people's Instagrams, where do they go for vacation? What pictures do they take?
Mm.
If you look at the tourist board for Belfast, I guess you are situated there. Or if
I'm
you
in
check for
London,
Stockholm.
but I'm from
London. Oh,
Belfast.
if you check for London or for Stockholm, an overwhelming majority of all the pictures and photos that the tourist board will post up will be of classical buildings.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
nothing to do with that they are old, because that is what people are attracted to, because they find them beautiful.
Mm.
So it's like now the most stupid thing about this the post-war period is that we have to scientifically prove what everyone knows instinctively. Um, because of this, relativism, because the modernists have corrupted, the culture in so many ways, and we can say it's the same with art. They introduced relativism in our culture. So beauty is just, in the eye of the beholder. So you may think that this concrete slab is ugly, but I find it beautiful, and you have no proof that your taste is like what everyone else think. It's just subjective.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you are uninformed, of course, because you are not educated, so you can't understand this. And if you are educated, then you are a Nazi. So, because Hitler also had opinions about architecture, therefore everyone that has opinions about architecture and don't like modernism is a Nazi. So,
Yeah, I'm just pulling up a picture actually of our Houses of Parliament because I mean that this will be the one in Belfast that always gets that will always be sort of like brought up by people. I'm just trying to get the picture up for you. It's a beautiful, beautiful old building, and it's I actually can't. Why can't I share this? Aha, here we go. So here we go. So yeah, can you see this?
yeah.
Yeah, it's this beautiful, beautiful, huge old building. And this is like the poster boy basically for Belfast.
Yeah. And why so? Because it's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly, and it really, really is. And
It's not only the building, the garden, it's the same thing with city planning. Modernists have ruined city planning. We used to have classical city planning. If you look at that building, you see there is a straight line. The garden, you have this effect called sight lines. So probably in a distance from this straight line, there is a fountain. So that you always have, when you stand either at the fountain or at you stand at the parliament, you look at this straight line and you see like a grand either building or a statue, in the end of this straight line. Classical planning works so much with visual effects, and that's also a reason why we love, the classical cities. Not only because of the architecture, because the planning also is so great in both functionally, but also aesthetically, because it creates these visual effects that makes you marvel. It's only positive feelings like wow. It's not how to say gigantism. It's not like too large. It's impressing. You feel humble, when you see these things.
yeah, and
Uh,
honestly, that's probably that may well be one of the things that like the modernists want to reject about it is that it feels like whenever you're in a building, like whether like you're in say like Rome and you're walking through streets that the buildings are like maybe 1,000 years old, maybe older, like obviously they've been restored and stuff, but and the that style of construction and of building, like with the like large stone blocks especially, like it feels like timeless and enduring, like it will stand there for 1,000 years. Well, like it has, but like it could stand for another 1,000, and like maybe the reason that the modernists reject it is because they hope to like tear down the things that have stood for so long in a sense, and that architecture is like a symbol of that past that they're attempting to reject.
Yes, very much so. They, all over Europe and especially in North America, I would say, modernists more or less try to bulldoze everything built before them. So we have lost so countless, amazing buildings for no other reason, that they hate the past. So it's very much like, I don't want to talk politics, but it reminds of a communist dictatorship or a fascist dictatorship. You will try to clear what was there before, so that no one should understand, that maybe we're on the wrong track now. There should be no evidence that something has been greater before than what is now. So they have very, very aggressively pursued, slum regeneration, all these crazy projects that destroyed countless amazing buildings, and they would have continued hadn't, popular protests. People were caught off guard, like, communists previously. They promised gold. They promised a new world, of equality and high living standard. Nothing wrong with that. I very much approve that, and I like that. But they promised this and used this as an excuse to attack everything that was there before. And then when we realized, oh, this is crap, all them, at the beginning, of course, you are happy when you move to a new apartment. I live in Stockholm. People were very happy in the first few years when they moved out, from downtown, from the central, from the beautiful historic buildings, because they had not been modernized yet. So they moved to these concrete suburbs, and they got heating, central heating. They got, running water. Also, we have in every basement there is like a laundry room, this. So of course they liked it, but quite quickly, after just a few years, as soon as they could, they left these blocks because they were so anonymous, they were so alienating, and they became, already in the 70s, they had problems, renting out these apartments. So what happened in Sweden, that we started tearing down these modernist blocks, because they were, they solved a short-term problem, but then they created a long-term problem instead. And we continued this, and we would have continued this weren't for that we have received, and this is not a political claim, it's just a fact. We received very high levels of immigration in Sweden the last 20 years. And, people that come from many different countries, they have low levels of social and economic capital. So they have been put in these concrete suburbs. And I think the situation is more or less the same in all of Western Europe. And because of this, the tearing down of all these modernist blocks has more or less stopped, which is very much a pity. Of course, it's capital destruction, but at the same time, you can't make these areas good because they are not only ugly, but they are wrongly planned. No matter how much, even if you would make the architecture great, the grid, the urban, suburban fabric, I would say, is bad. It will not create opportunities for small businesses. It will not be places where people want to recreate or that, like a natural town extension or like a village extension. It won't never be that with the current urban structure that there is in place. So at the moment, at least, we're stuck with these places.
Yeah, I mean, in London, I can say at least, like, there's so much like classical architecture around the city, and so many listed buildings. And that it's also interesting, like the modernist style of architecture you speak of, like you can see some parts of it in London, but all of the new things that I'm watching being built are not following that modernist aesthetic. It's like they moved past that phase in an attempt for it to feel like a more natural extension of the city itself, because it had so much of that to begin with. So I wanted to go back here just a little bit to something you said. So you were talking about the classical architecture sort of like not being like a very specific, like there's not like specific rules as such, as more as it's like a framework for design. And you mentioned that it imitates the scale of nature. I was wondering if you could like explain that a little bit more and sort of how that works.
Yeah. So basically, if you go really, really long time back, there's this famous Roman architect, Vitruvius, that, he made designs, human scale. A human should be like the measurement of when you create a building. And you have this, like a scale. So when you design, you should have this in mind all the time, one human. So there you got regulations, how far should everything, from, if you go further, in the 1500s, how far should windows be? How should windows be organized? How high should every level of a building be? There are countless, of measurements. And these measurements, it's not exact, but, it feels right when you see it. So this is the human scale aspect of it. I hope it's not, exactly written down, but it's the original measurement is man and what feels right, what instinctively feels right when you create a building. And then you have, they have worked out, facade division, how you create a facade that is appealing for our eyes. And when I say appealing for our eyes, it's very much about readability.
So the facade, you mean
with beauty.
the outside of the building?
Yes, and outside of the building. So when you look at a classical facade in London or in Stockholm or in New York or in Madrid, you'll see that most buildings, especially post 1500s, they have a very, very similar facade division. It doesn't matter if they built 1500 or they will build 1900. You have a baseline, they have the first floor is a bit higher, and there you have also a baseline, like, yes, a clear line after the first floor. That keeps your eyes straight. When you're walking, that street, that line will make you look straight and not, your eyes won't go up and down. Secondly, you have a middle section.
So like this?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. You see the baseline. The baseline is very, very clear here. You can see that the windows are a bit larger. Then you see the middle section and you have another line. Not every building has it, but you have another line on the upper part. The middle section, the windows are a bit smaller than the base, where the, floor, you have the entrance and you have, shop windows, etc. And then you have the upper section, and it's very clear because, you see that the windows are smaller. So it's very, very simple and very readable for our mind. What is bottom, what is middle section, and what is top. So just by a glance, you can read this building, you understand this building. And when I say read, it's not that you think about it. Yeah, you see, it goes again and again and again.
I'd never noticed that. This is fascinating. Now I'm not going to be able to stop looking at this everywhere I go now.
I will tell you more things. So this is when you walk the street, this baseline keeps your eye fixes straight, so they won't go up and down. If you have a modernist building like built in the 1960s, there's no difference between the levels, so your eyes, fluctuate up and down. And this is not, you don't think about these things. It's like, how to say, unconscious. So these things happen unconscious inside you. Yeah, you can have Regent Street, you can click on that building and you will see, you see the same again and again and again and again.
Yeah, well, it's not a great size image, but yes, I see exactly what you mean.
And it doesn't matter if it's built 1500, 1600, 1700 or 1900. Yeah. It follows this, it's different styles, but they follow, this basic framework that makes a building readable. When you look at this building, you don't need to think. You can read it instantly. And this, in our savanna brains, when we started walking upright, it was very important, like for all animals, to quickly be able to read our environment. So this type of facade psychologically make us calm because you can read it. And we can make it a contrast. If you Google like a modernist building, they are, especially now when we have a new crazy phase of modernism, when they try to put the windows hux flux all over the facade, it makes us much harder for us to read the building, and it stresses us. Again, it's not that we think that we are stressed, everything works unconsciously. So here you can read the building, but if you walk, if you come closer, your eyes will be kept on the street, and if you are from a distance, you can instantly read this building. Secondly, you have something in the classical tradition called part symmetries. So you see how the windows are organized. If we can get a front of a classical building, it will be clearer.
Trying to find the front of one that's straight on.
We can take the one that you had, the first one, the new
this one,
the new gallery. Yeah, this one, gallery. So you see that there is symmetry in the facade, but it's not like one symmetry, like every window is the same on a straight line. You see that there are part symmetries. So there are different kind of pairs. So in that way, it's like an amazing solution. You get readability, let's say harmony for our minds, and variation in the same building. So you can instantly read, the building. At the same time, it tickles us a little bit, There's, you find different pairs when you look at this one. So this is also, if you look at a 60s building, if you Google like 60s modernism, so I can just simply show the contrast. High rise, add the high rise, 60s modernism high rise. Okay, we can take
this one maybe.
Yeah, we can take this one at large. Well, first of all, you see there's no difference between the different levels. It's just one, one blob. So our eyes go up and down, and there's no logical structure to it. Secondly, it bores. Our minds get bored by this.
Yeah.
Because there are no pairs. There's dullness and chaos at the same building. While the classical building has order, like variation and order in the same building, here you have chaos and distress in the same building. Because there's no clear, what is bottom, what is top. Every level is the same. And there's at the same time, there's no variation in this building. Even though, everything here is symmetric in a way, it's a boring symmetric. It's a symmetric that makes you dull, it dulls your mind. So this is, horrible. And then if we go further, because this was post-war modernism, the dull, now we have a different kind of modernism. If you Google a building I know very well, because it's close to where I live, like a final building, just as an example, because I think many people will recognize this style. So Stockholm Intercontinental Hotel.
The Stockholm what hotel?
Intercontinental Hotel. Let's see.
This one?
That was the old one. Let's see. Stockholm Hotel City.
Is this it?
Wait, I will see if I can find it for you. Scandic, Stockholm Scandic Intercontinental Hotel. SCANDIC, Scandic Intercontinental Hotel. There you have it. Perfect. And if you take one picture, so what you can see here, this is a render. So take one of the photos. What you can see here is this is a trend in recent crazy modernism, is that there's just chaos on the facade. You cannot find a pair here. There's total asymmetry in this facade. So our minds try to read this building, but they cannot, because there is no pair. There is no symmetry anywhere. The windows are just exactly perfectly randomly placed over the facade. So there's no order. So this is not only ugly, it stresses us very much. And as you can see also, it's lack a base, midsection, and top. Everything is the same. And at the same time, you can't read this building. Your brain will try, but it cannot. And this horrible trend we see more and more in many new builds because it's new. It has not been done before. So therefore, it must be done according to modernist thinking.
Yeah, this is like, and what you say about the stress is really, really interesting, because I don't know, there's something about, like, for example, I'll tell you what, let me pull up the Bank of England, which I'm not a fan of in their monetary policy, but in the building itself, it, like, whenever you walk around this part of London, which is very close to me actually, and you get that there's this like a sense of like grandeur and like it's almost very calming to walk around these streets and these buildings, and what you're saying about like the stress of modern that's created by like this modernist thing is really starts to make sense when I think about it in this context, as to why, and probably why people feel so at peace in like more ancient buildings and even like cathedrals and churches and stuff, because they all have this sense of like scale and grandeur that must be illicit in that. And I'd never really linked that specifically to the type of architecture.
Everything is on purpose. That was, it's not, by chance that we like this whole thing. There was so much thought process, and we can see it on this photo is perfect because we see so many classical things here. I can go through them. First, you have this, the visual effect. This building is central in the square, and it's, you have two lines, and it forms a square, and you have a statue in front. This building is imposant. You get, respect for it. At the same time, it's not gigantic. The scale is still human. It's not a tower. Also, in the traditional city, you have height limitations. So you see all these buildings, they are like maximum 6 or 7 floors. That you have more or less all of Europe, you have height limitations. Then you have, London City, where they remove the height limitation and you see the chaos behind. It's just, it's both ugly, disharmonic, and it's also the thing with building heights. There are many bad things. One is, of course, that it creates a bad climate because these skyscrapers bring wind from above and bring it down to the street.
Yeah,
they can block. Also, they can block good winds. If I've
yes, I felt
I have relatives. I have relatives in Israel and Tel Aviv. They, it was planned by a British city planner, during the British Mandate, and it was such a fantastic plan because there was no air conditioning at that time. Search for Giddens plan Tel Aviv. Your screen is a bit unsharp also. I don't know if it...
this is probably because of the way I have to share it in order for it to look.
So if you just take that picture further to the left, what Giddens did is he made, you see these lines, he made a lot of lines and boulevards from the sea. Okay, they are not, this is like a first specific, what he did, if you look on the later plans, if you take like a later, because this was a first sketch of...
This one, maybe?
Take Tel Aviv city map, and it will be more...
Maybe like this one?
Take that one. Yeah. So what he did, he built a lot of...
That's not very clear.
He made the grid so that a lot of streets end up in the sea. And there were, big boulevards, big lines, big streets towards the sea, so that, because it gets very, very hot in the summer, so that the ocean breeze could flow freely through the entire city to cool it down. And what did modernist Israeli planners do in the 60s? They built high rises in front of all these, these openings that Giddens had created. There you see how, the lines that Giddens created. But now very many of these are blocked by towers that modernist architects built in the 1960s. So all this cooling effect that Giddens created had been lost, and the city is much, much hotter now due to this, modernist planning, because they reject everything, ancient wisdom. But back to the previous building about,
Sorry, I just wanted to have a look. So these are, I guess these are the sorts of high rises that you mean along the seafront.
So they block now they block all the boulevards that used to end in the open sea are now blocked. So this effectively shuts down the ocean breeze that Giddens planned to enter the city.
So sorry, where were we? We were looking at.
And I guess, I haven't studied it specifically, but if we look at any, kind of New Delhi or any, British colonial city, you would find similar, adaptations, natural adaptations to heat, using, very, very, ecological thinking in a way, they use natural cooling. But if we go back to this building, so you have height limitations, you have sight lines, you have a visual imposing building in the center here. Everything is ordered, yet it's varied at the same time. It's not only, the facade division of the building, but it also, the use of ornament, of course. Ornament is important in many ways, not only because it's beautiful, it's also cultural expression of who we are. And a reminder, because modernist thinking dominates so many aspects of our culture that we believe that we are some kind of superior humans to people that lived 100 years before us. I would say that it's the opposite. They didn't have computers, they didn't have anything, and they created these, marvelous wonders that we still cannot copy. That is, amazing. So ornament and old buildings remind us that there were people before us, and we are part of a chain. There will be people after us also. In 100 years, you and me will be dead, and there will be people after us. So instead of thinking like a progress line that we are somehow more advanced people before us, instead we are part of a chain. Technology, our technology has improved over the last 100 years, but we are the same humans as after 100 years. We're the same humans, the last 50,000 years, I think. We are exactly the same humans. If you read... I don't know his English name, Marcus Aurelius.
Same name.
Same in English.
Yeah, it's still.
And you read his thinking. It's the same thing. You could relate to everything that he writes. If you read the Bible, the stories, the drama and the intrigue in the Bible.
Currently reading, literally.
So you find the same human drama, the same emotions. There's love, there is fear, there's death. They are not different from us. They are exactly the same humans. But they created amazing art and architecture that we still cannot copy today. Despite that we are a million times richer, we have so much more resources. If you could check the amount of resources that they have today compared to 100 years ago, what is a factor by a million or something, the Victorians had what they have to build: dynamite and working with hand and steam engines. Today we have computer added engineering, controlled explosions, robotics, different types of machinery like they could even never imagine. And still, despite that, we cannot build anything that would impress them or impress ourselves, by the way.
Well, I mean, people like you talk. If you think about like the most striking piece of construction in the entire world, people will pick the pyramids almost every single time, and that's like possibly depends who you believe, the oldest like structures that we like, the oldest like and grandest structures that we can see, or like some of the oldest at least anyway. Maybe save for like Göbekli Tepe. So you keep saying this, that like we have all of these resources and all of this like technology and computing power and intelligence, and access to information, and yet,
sorry, one more thing.
yes,
There has never ever been so much talent on Earth, but it's all wasted. Think of it. How many people have access to higher education globally 100 years ago? So today we are like 8 times more people. I think we are 8 billion today, and we were 1 billion 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And of these 8 billions, at least 60% have access to a good, if you include, China and India now, at least 60% of the world's population have access to higher education.
Yeah, and that's
And
only the ones that have the access to university. Like, then there's all of the, like, there's more information on the internet than our ancestors 100 years ago could have ever, like, you could get a PhD level university education with an internet connection.
Yeah.
In every topic you can imagine, yeah.
I think I read, the British author Eric Hobsbawm, I think is his name. He wrote, about the science in the 19th century. It was around 10,000 people that, created all the marvelous science of the 19th century. How many scientists are there? I think only in the UK there should be 10 times that figure at least.
Probably.
Yeah. So we have never in the history of the world we had so much talent, and it's all wasted. So it's such a tragedy at the same time.
So, like, with all of these things, then, you say that we can't build something that would impress them. Like, is it actually that we can't, like, physically are not capable, or is there, like, some glass ceiling preventing us from, reascending to the heights of classical architecture?
No, there is no, we can be exactly the same. We can create new classical style, equally marvelous like the old. We can, pick up the gauntlet wherever we want. If we want to continue from Art Nouveau or from Art Deco, that's, a choice. We can imitate previous styles, or we can create new styles. We can create everything, and there's enough talent in this world. What is needed is, because the modernist has a total grip on architecture schools in every country. There is starting cracks in the wall now. So now you can actually study diploma classical architecture at least one university, at Notre Dame in the US. And I think Cambridge now started a program where you can study, at least courses in classical architecture. And you have a very alive classical architecture scene in the UK. Quite conservative. When I say conservative, it's not a bad word, but it's not innovative. It's very much focused, on creating beautiful new buildings, but in already established 19th century styles. And this can create a misunderstanding, because it's not like we want an eternal 19th century. We want the framework, and from that framework you create, new styles. But they have total control. Back to the question, they have total control of the architectural establishment, and they have poisoned the culture with relativism. Relativism and hindered very effectively until recently, until the rise of social media. They have also been able to suppress all critique. Relativism has been very damaging in two ways. One way is that many people have accepted it. Despite that they don't believe it, they know what they think is beautiful and ugly. They accept that, it's just my perspective, and they don't put it in a grander scheme. So in that way, we have been conditioned to accept ugliness. That is one thing. The second is that if you're a construction company, and this is not a critique of construction companies, they've always been greedy. They was very, very greedy 100 years ago. I promise you that, during Victorian era, I don't think they were no bleed hearts,
No.
How much can we squeeze out of these poor workers? They were always greedy, and that's not a bad thing. They don't have an ideology. They are profit maximizing, like all companies. They can build a beautiful lavish building like they did 100 years ago, or they can build a concrete box. They don't care. They care only about profit, and they can make profit out of every building, beautiful or ugly. They don't care.
Yeah.
What they do care about is, of course, profit maximizing. And building classical is not especially more expensive than building modernist. It's not building modernist in general, but of course, if you just make an ugly square box with no detailing, no anything, everything standardized models that you just click together, of course it will be cheaper. And then the construction companies got the perfect present from architects. I mean, beauty is just in the eye of the beholder. So you may think that this gray box is ugly, but I think it's beautiful. It's just a subjective. And then they can get shielded from all critics. Then, of course, you have the third party. Then, you think that the public or especially our elected politicians should step in. And the damage modernism has done there is even greater. Because until recently, I speak of Sweden and maybe Germany and probably UK now more and more. If you had an opinion as a politician about architecture, especially if you wanted classical and didn't like all the ugly boxes that modernists put up, then you were a Nazi. Because Hitler had an opinion about architecture, then you have suspicion Nazi leanings. It's just so absurd.
Yeah.
But people bought it. And one reason that they bought it is because the cultural journalists in most newspapers are more or less the same people as the modernist architects. They believe themselves to be some kind of avant-garde that understand things better than everyone else. So what you got is if one politician said, oh, but this is horrible, this is ugly, why don't we build beautiful classical? Then every paper, every culture section would say that this politician has dangerous Nazi leanings. And no one want to, and this may sound too extreme, but I invite everyone to try to discuss with a modernist architect and say that you want classical architecture. In 5 seconds, you will be called a fascist or a Nazi. Or at least this is dangerous to like beauty because then you have Nazi leanings. This is not a joke. This is 100% serious. It will happen to everyone that opens their mouth about this. So this has shut the mouth of politicians. And they just, oh, but he's an educated architect. He must know best. Well, what do I know? Okay, I may think this building is ugly, but I don't want to risk my political career for a building, basically.
Yeah.
So this worked as long as there were only like newspapers. Of course, someone dared to speak out, but then, it ended up in the culture section as there was a little exchange. Nothing happened. The modernists were always able to suppress. But with social media, now suddenly you can do effective advocacy and it doesn't need to go away. They cannot suppress it. They cannot hide it.
Yeah.
And they are forced to debate. This is very important because all these, techniques that they use, that they will call you a Nazi, they will call you a fascist, etc., is just because they want to kill the debate before it starts. Because as soon as the debate starts, they will lose. If you have a rational argument about them, it will just fall like a house of cards. So that's why they always try to kill the debate. I am lucky and I will be very open to all your listeners about this. I have victim card points. And I hate to say it, but I recommend everyone that does argument about architecture to have victim card points. You see, my mother is Jewish. All her relatives died in the Holocaust. She was born in a refugee camp in Soviet Uzbekistan in Bukhara in 1944. So she is really, the first years of her life were not that fancy, you could really say. So it's hard to call me a Nazi with that in mind. So they start calling me a Nazi, then I tell this, and then they, oh. And then we start to have a serious debate. And as soon as we have a serious debate, arguments, they lose in 5 seconds. So find your victim cards. I hate to say it, but find your victim cards. Something you can find, if your grandfather, well, you're UK, your grandfather fought the Nazis maybe, or your grandmother, was a signalist or radar operator. Use all this because you're going to need it. Before you can enter a serious debate with a modernist, you need to have this shield so that they cannot kill the debate by calling you a Nazi.
Yeah, it's crazy that we're at that point. Do you know what's funny? Like on the complete other side of that, like the thing that springs to my mind when we talk about city planning, for example, right? And you talk about like actually like thinking about this on a large scale. The thing that I can hear people saying isn't actually that at all. It's I can hear like the complete other side of the coin in them saying, "Oh, well, that's just central planning from the state. That's communism." And like the we have to just let the free market take hold and do that will figure out the best way to make the city.
And that's also idiocy. I think it's American influence, because strange to say it, because America is the land of free thinking and diversity, or at least used to be. You have this very binary thinking. I think it's come from their political parties, because they only have two political parties. So it's either raw capitalism, free market, or state controlled. There's no central mind. Of course, you should be pragmatic. You should check what works best. So how was the lovely cities of Europe? I can speak most. I've been to the UK. I visited London. I visited Bristol and Oxford, but I'm more familiar with Central Europe. So what built these magnificent cities? Like Prague, Vienna, München, Paris.
Yeah, Munich is beautiful. Innsbruck, I'm a big fan of. I lived there. I lived just outside Innsbruck for five winters.
Yeah. So what built these cities was good regulations, and then after that you let the market free. So when I speak of good regulations, the city created the magnificent grid, using classical planning with sight lines, boulevards, hierarchy of streets. The city also played where should public buildings be and religious buildings. The city imposed height regulations. So except for public buildings and religious buildings, all buildings should be like maximum 6 stories or whatever height they said. But usually it's maximum 6 or 7 stories, never higher. And that is also a good. I stray all the time because there's so many good things with the classical. Because of course, in modern days we need research for everything that everyone knew. But if you live higher than 7 stories, you lose all connection with the street. People get alienated. Children go out less if they live in high rises. So if you live closer, maximum 7 stories, you have a meaningful relationship with the street. You can see what's going on. I don't know, you have a kind of different traditional planning in the UK. You have very much row houses. We have like courtyard houses, a courtyard and buildings are around them, also continental Europe. So you can look in the courtyard, you can see the children are playing or something, and then go in. If you live on the 40th floor, you cannot see anything, what's happening on the ground. Back to the subject. I stray because there are so many. Nothing is by chance in the classical city. Why it's so great. So you have height restrictions. You have the grid in place, you have the public buildings in place, and you create plots and you divide the plots. And it's not one developer that, build all the buildings. Each plot is an individual building. And that individual building is not free for all. It must follow height regulations. And it follows the classical tradition. Okay, that wasn't an option. There was nothing else than the classical tradition. When I thought. But you see, even if you have different buildings, they are in harmony with each other. They are different. If you look at a street in London or Paris, or maybe not Paris because it's a more uniform city. Let's say Stockholm or London or Belfast. There may be buildings from different ages on a single street, but still they form a whole, they for a harmonic whole.
Can you see that? That's from your Twitter. I wanted to pull this up for an example for people of the type of architecture you mean. Like this is very prevalent in continental Europe. Yeah, in Innsbruck. I used to live in a building like this actually.
And I'm a very much courtyard urbanism. If you want to explore that subject, I can explain why.
That'd be great. Is there what's the best thing for me to look at?
Yeah, you can look at that building, and I can explain, why I'm a
let's
courtyard
just stick to that
urbanist.
One, please.
Yeah. So first of all, you have grid making. There's a very different urban planning tradition in the UK. Okay, you have cities like London and central cores, you have grids, but otherwise you have like endless row house. How I understand
Terrace.
tradition, UK, your terrace houses. In continental Europe, you have grids, more classical grids, and you have these courtyard buildings. The courtyard building is an amazing invention because what you get, especially now with these in modern times where you repurpose the courtyards, and now with new buildings, this is a new block that was built, you modernize the courtyard a bit. So what you have here outside is the bustling city, with noise and people walking around and parties, cars, whatever. But inside is totally soundproof. So what you get is that every building block get this private, green, silent island. So outside is the city, and inside you have your calm private greenery. It's not dangerous to let your children. If you check, if you go further down, I think you should be able to see photos of this building. No, that's another one. But if you go back to that one, sorry, I can't show on street level, but I can explain at least. So what you have here is a large green courtyard. There you can have your kids, there you can have barbecue, there you can have everything, and you will not notice that there's a 4 million metropole on the outside. That's how you bring families back to the city. Also, this is also very important. Where do you have your balconies? One thing that I hate with modernist buildings is all the balconies on the facade because they are never used. Because in traditional setting, a majority of balconies are towards the courtyard. Why? Because it's private and silent. No one sits, or very few people at least, sit on balconies facing the street. They don't do this because it's noisy. So when you sit on your balcony, in the morning sun and drink your coffee, you don't want all the noise from the city. Also, it's not private. It's not that people are unpolite, but if you sit on your balcony on the front facade, of course people will get curious, passerbys, and stare at you. And it feels kind of irritating that you read your coffee and people stare at you. If you sit on your balcony at the courtyard, it will only be people, even if you don't know your neighbors perfectly, they will know that they will both be less curious and they will respect your privacy because you have some kind of, relationship. So in that sense, you can sit in your pajamas towards the courtyard. It's quiet, it's green, and it's private. So you get privacy. You can choose when you are private, and you can choose when you're public. You got a silent green island where you can put, of course, you should take your kids to park and outdoors. But if they just want to play outside, if they're small, with playing with sand or such, then they can go to this courtyard. And because the height is maximum, this height is 6 stories. You can look from your courtyard balcony and look down and see that everything's all right. And then you can shout at them when there's dinner. So perfect.
Well, you also probably wouldn't want it too tall or you wouldn't get as much sun in there.
No, you wouldn't.
And I was just thinking the air quality as well on your balcony would be much better if you're facing inwards than facing out. You're not getting the direct emissions from the cars or buses or whatnot as well.
Yeah, even with electric cars, you will get the tires rip up particles.
Huge amounts of air pollution is actually is the rubber from the tires. I didn't know this till recently. That blew my mind.
So that's why if I can be a fanatic when it comes to city planning, it's continental European courtyard urbanism, but also where you update the court, because courts, they were built originally, they created courtyards to get in sun and light into the apartments. They still do that, function very well, but the court itself, you did laundry and you had toilet there. We don't need to do laundry and you don't have your toilet in the courtyard, so now you can have like a private green island there. So that's like an upgrade, an evolution of the classical tradition.
That's amazing.
So
yeah.
And this is the way to bring families, because all cities want to bring families back to the city center. We don't just want, people with no kids or singles in their 20s. We want, all demographics to be able to live in the city, because it makes a much better city. It makes a more interesting city. It gets a more lively city, not a city with people that are 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 30s. Not only, young singles that want to party and then they move to the suburbs. So if you offer, some of the conveniences that exist in the suburb, silence, some privacy, some private greenery, and of course, modern spacious apartments. Yeah. I think many will choose the city center, because, the city center, especially now, when the air quality is getting better in most cities. Yeah, why not? It's not like the 70s. My father used to tell that you could take in Stockholm, because of the traffic, you could taste lead in your mouth, because of the gasoline had lead in it. We don't do that anymore, luckily. And, there's much less traffic, and there's more bicycling. So the city has gotten healthier to live in. So why not? If you can move, then you can have 2 kids, 3 kids, even 4 kids, and live a good life in the city center. You don't need to live in a villa in the suburbs. Even if I'm not against people living in a villa in the suburbs, it's just that there should be an equal good option. You should not force people to move to the suburbs. They should be able to live in the city center if they want that, if they find that these things are good for them.
Yeah, you've really blown my mind tonight.
I say things that most people, it's not that you didn't know these. You felt these things. 99% of people I talk with, they have always felt this, but they haven't been able to put words on these things. Because that's also, I studied sociology very much at the university, so I learned all the tactics that you can use here. It's, it's control of the vocabulary. There's on purpose, there's a lack of terms to describe everything. And the modernists will try to make so much smokescreen as they can. They will talk about styles. They will not talk about, the overall architecture philosophies, because always this relativist thinking. Some like this style, is another like that style. It's nothing, it's not, something big or grand. It's just, a preference or something. So they will try to, make smoke screens, make you talk about. They will not say modernist. I will say modernist, and I encourage everyone to say modernist. They will talk about modern architecture, as I mentioned in the beginning of this talk, because they want you to fall in the semantic trap. I like modern architecture, and you like unmodern architecture. How do you say it in English? Unmodern architecture. So it's very much about taking back the discourse of the talk and the terminology. And if there's a lack of terminology, then I'm glad to help, to give you the words you need to describe what you feel, because you have felt it. All humans feel it, but we have been diluted, so we cannot, express it in a meaningful way. The first time I, started thinking about this, I was about 19. I was partying with some friends in the Baltic Sea. There's a Baltic Sea island called Gotland, with a very, very beautiful medieval city called Visby. And I just walked around, and it was so amazingly beautiful. And why don't they build all new houses? It sounds very stupid today.
No, I mean, I've had the exact same thought.
Yeah, because I lacked terminology, vocabulary to express, what I felt, and all people felt. And that's a way of controlling our thinking, because we haven't been able to formulate critique of what we don't like. We can just feel it, but we cannot formulate what we don't like.
Like the only word I had previously, basically, to describe that style of architecture was like soulless, because that's how it felt to me. And I'd never been able to quite put my finger on like walking around, even in Belfast, like there's some really beautiful old buildings down in Belfast. But then you had just have the terraced houses for miles and miles and miles, or these new like square prison block skyscrapers, and I'd never been able to quite like articulate why that seems so much worse than walking around like cities like Innsbruck or Munich, like you said, and that were always just like, yeah, just enchantingly beautiful. And like part of me was thinking, is it because they just rebuilt them all after the war, as they had previously been? But it seems like it's like that they were yes, okay, they were rebuilt after the war, but because they were following this classical style of architecture that had been around for so long. I've taken a lot of your time here already. Do you have like a few more minutes just to I wanted to ask just about the clip I'd seen initially of yourself was talking about why sort of classical architecture was more sustainable and like better for the environment than say buildings with trees on the sides. And I thought that was brilliant. So do you have like 5 minutes to explain that concept?
Oh yeah, no problem. I can explain it for 20 minutes. It's until your ears drop. I will use nicer words than what I use in private, but it's modernist architects. Their stupidity knows no bounds. And I'm very, after talking with them for 8 years, they're not very clever people. They're not intelligent people, and they cannot argue why they do like they do. So they are focused on materials. And it's just, this is so illogical. Do we preserve buildings because they had good materials? Are the buildings standing today that we love because they had good quality materials? They believe that a sustainable building is one that is built in, eco-friendly materials. But a building, as I said in that very short clip, a building is ecological when we want to preserve it, and we don't want to preserve ugly buildings. And I can give you a very, very good example. I know we do it in Sweden. I know we do it in many other countries. You must do it in the UK. I bet you do it in the UK. We reuse old factory buildings from the 19th century. And they become, luxury residential buildings, for creative types to do art and all these things. Could anyone imagine that we would reuse a 1960s factory and repurpose it for housing? Not a chance. It will be torn down, as soon as it's not used as a factory anymore. So by building classical and beautiful with cultural expression, we want to preserve a building. That is ecological. The longer the lifespan of a building, the more eco-friendly it is. Because the biggest contribution to CO2, of course, there is heating, but if you have an old building, you can modernize it. So it comes up to the modern standards of heating and such. But usually they are good, made in materials, so they have natural. They cool down in the summer and they get warm in the winter. But anyway, because they are beautiful, they get longer lifespan. Because every generation will try, when the original function is no longer valid, when it's not a factor anymore. Oh, but it's such a beautiful thing. What would it be? Such a pity to tear it down. So let's make housing of it. And when it's not housing anymore, let's make offices of it. Let's make a cinema of it. There will always be, if you have an old London building, that's 500 years, how many purposes have it had during its lifetime? And why was it repurposed so many times? Because people loved it. So if you build buildings and you focus on the wrong things, if you focus on materials instead of aesthetic and cultural expression, I must really stress this, because it's not beauty like neuroscientific beauty, it's also beauty in the form of cultural expressions. You're in the UK, you combine what was in the past with what you believe will become in the future. And you create like a frozen time frame, with cultural expressions, ornaments, statues, so that this building has value beyond mere function. Then people will preserve it. And that's the key to build ecological. And because all these architects are 99%, there are many classical architects, but they are still a fringe, compared to the to the sum, total amount of architects. They are modernists, so they are focused on materials and think if we only build with the right materials and put some grass on the roof, then it will be a green building. But it won't, because if it's ugly, as soon as the original purpose is lost, it will be torn down, and then you will build anew.
Something like
I can say this, like that. That's just craziness.
Yeah.
That will last for 30 years. Yeah.
Please.
And this is also this just shows how little these people know. I would never ever want to live in such a tower, not only because it's a tower, because how many insects will be at your balcony? Can you eat? Do you think seriously that someone can eat a dinner at that balcony without getting 3 trillion bugs, mosquitoes, beetles pestering you? Of course, you can solve that with pesticides, but then it won't be a green building. So,
yeah, that's half the problem with the.
Yeah,
that's what half the protests are against is the pesticides that we use.
Yeah, so it's they never think. There's always you always have to think. If you should do something new, there's something called unintended consequences, and this looks great on renders.
Yeah.
But very, very quickly, people realize that this is a bug paradise. I'm not scared of bugs, but I know that my girlfriend is very scared of bugs, and I know that the kids are scared of bugs. So why would you want to live in a bug paradise?
Yeah.
Because they will build nests there also. You will get birds' nests, and it can be cozy from a distance, but you don't want a bird's nest, above your balcony and have, bird poo all over your balcony. It's, yeah. So anyway, if you build a beautiful building, it will be reused. For every generation will reuse it. Today, old factory buildings are reused. Old working class districts in Stockholm, in Berlin, in Munich, in Paris are hyper gentrified today. They have become luxury areas. Can you imagine, that the dwellings built for the working class 100 years ago are so beautiful and good that today no worker, not even middle class, can afford to live there. But the people that do live there, and this is also very interesting, in our former working class district in Stockholm, and it's probably the same in all the other countries, a majority, a third of all Swedish architects live in this traditional working class district. And equally many of our journalists. So I think it was an Englishman that said it. I think his name is Alexander Studdard. I think he's like I don't know if he's an architect. I think he's a sculptor, because he also saw this, because it's the same, in the UK, that clearly modernism is something you do to others. Because all these architects and culture journalists, they live in these traditional neighborhoods, in traditional buildings, but in their offices, they create buildings and urbanity that they don't themselves want to live in. And that's, the clearest evidence that something is very, very, very wrong.
Well, Michael,
I finally say, I want for all the viewers, check this out. Don't take me for word. Now look at buildings, these facade divisions that I talked about, and check out all the, historic factory buildings, warehouses, mills, and see how they are all repurposed today as luxury buildings. And remember that they were utility buildings.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a very, very prominent, as late as the 30s, they built great. What's it called? You have a large Art Deco power station in the UK. What's it called? Not Reading Power Station, but you have if you check for Art Deco power plant UK.
Art
and it
Deco
has been
power plant.
UK.
I was about to just be a little bit proud of my city. I'll show you in a second. What happened?
I'm very passionate about this subject, so I can just talk.
Don't worry about
until
it at
end
all.
of time. So.
It's I love people with passion about things. So let me pull this up.
I hope people believe that this is a good cause. So
I think I would be stunned if they didn't. Put it that way. Let me pull this up for you.
Yeah, there you have it. There you have it.
Which one?
Battersea.
Oh, Battersea. Yeah, my my
Yeah.
flatmate wants to live there.
Yeah. So this is a power plant, like the nuclear reactor of the day.
Yeah.
but
There's a good one.
it's so beautiful, especially interiors. Exteriors can be a bit dull, but if you check the old control room and you see the glass ceiling there in the center.
Oh yeah, here.
Oh, there, yes, there. To the left.
This one.
No, not that one. If you go to there, where you have the mouse.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even think that was. I thought that was a picture of something else.
Oh.
Wow, that is absolutely fucking beautiful.
Yeah. So a power plant from the 1930s is so beautiful that what is it today? Now it's probably luxury housing, and you have offices, and you have luxury retail. Can anyone imagine a coal plant or a nuclear plant built post-war being repurposed?
No.
No. So beauty and cultural expression is the ultimate sustainability. And if you don't build beautiful, buildings will not last. We tear down how many buildings in the city that you live or that anyone lives in from the 80s have you start tearing down now? Yeah. All the office blocks from the 80s, they are tearing them down now. Is that sustainable? No, it's not.
No.
And why do they tear them down? Because they are broken somehow? No. Yeah. Because they have no value beyond mere function. So when they're not needed as an office anymore, then you tear them down and you build a new function. Yeah. You don't reuse.
Yeah. I just wanted to show you this one thing. Where are we? We'll go back just a second. This building in Belfast. This was burnt out. There's a Primark in here. But it burnt. There was a fire inside, and it burnt down entirely. Oh, there's the picture. You can't really see it. Here we are. Yeah. It burnt down the entire thing, and they rebuilt the entire thing again as it was. I was so proud of them. I was so pleased with my city because they decided not to get rid of such a beautiful building. They wanted to keep it. And it was really, really beautiful that they did, because they were in this, they got into this phase of, there was like a building like thing designed, or a building project planned in Belfast for this beautiful part of the city called the Cathedral Quarter. And they wanted to knock down half of it and replace it with this massive new like shopping center that was just, it looked awful, and it was going to tear down all these old buildings that looked just as you've described, this classical style of architecture, and they were going to rename the entire district to Tribeca, triangle beside the cathedral, like just taking the name straight from New York and like losing the entire soul of like one of the most beautiful and popular parts of the city in order to create some new fucking trash. And it's been like on hold for years and years and years because people keep pushing back against it because they love that part of the city. So yeah, we can win.
We can win, but that's there are so many subjects to cover here, but that's a very important thing that you said, because yes, we stop 99 idiotic projects. Here where I live in Stockholm, we stop 99 idiotic projects, but if they just keep coming, one gets through. So this is also important why we need to be new traditional architecture, because we cannot only be on defensive and slowly lose our built environment. We must build new beauty as well. We must go on the offensive. Our city should become more beautiful for every year, not less beautiful. And we can only do that if we go to offensive. Preserving old buildings, yes, but equally important, adding new beauty. Because if there's only modernism, one idiotic project will go through. Every year there will be one new crazy building that expresses our time, blah, 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 and is climate eco-friendly, sustainable, but it's not. Just, the worst of wordsmiths have been working on the description.
Well, anyway, Michael, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to chat to you. You've changed the entire way I'm going to look at every city I think I ever visit. So for that, thank you very much. And I hope everyone has enjoyed it as much as I did. So I'll put your website and your Twitter in the description below for people that can find it and explore more of your work and follow you on Twitter where you're always posting about examples of this and like positive examples as well where people are creating new classical architecture from these old buildings. So
there's also the Facebook group. It all began on Facebook, a few years ago. So the Facebook group we must also add, because at the Facebook group, Facebook allows longer text. So you have a little more explanatory text. You have all the photos. Also important, all the old posts are stored in albums in the Facebook group. So you can check the country that interests you, if it's UK in your case, or any country, Netherlands, Belgium, Latin America. You can check all the posts, so you can quickly find, old, different projects, sorted after country. There's also an atlas of new traditional architecture that I created. You can find it on the blog page. It's a Google Maps layer. It's a collaboration with me. I'm the main contributor, but there are many other contributors as well, where we added projects. So whenever you travel, you can, if you're interested, you can find new traditional buildings and just check them out and feel them, if they feel right, if the architect made something right.
Oh, wow. Hang on. Let me just show people this. That's incredible.
It's a never-ending project, it's so many projects to add, but at least I think there should be quite many, especially in London.
Yeah, there's
London and Paris region and Berlin.
Just gonna pull one up. The closest one to my house, Canary Wharf, Isle of Dogs. Aha.
There are some are
pretty.
not completed yet, so then there are just renders.
Yeah.
But many that are completed, there is photos, there's link to the architect.
Oh wow! I'm gonna have a fun evening playing around with this.
Yeah.
This is gonna be amazing.
And when you travel to a new place, you can check if they have new traditional architecture as well. This is a way, to create cooperation, because unfortunately, English is a lingua franca, but surprisingly, very, very many people don't speak it. So every country is more or less like a language bubble. So by helping people, by doing all the research about from different countries, it makes it easier. If you are a classical architect or a student of classical architecture or just interested, you can discover what is happening in Austria or Italy or Spain or Peru or Philippines. And you can instantly find architects working there, projects done there, and you can send an email. Hello, how are you? And yeah.
Well, there's a lot of them in Holland, Belgium.
Yeah, they're classified after quality. So red indicates like basic quality. It's the lowest level. Then you have blue is good, very good quality. And then you have dark blue. That's excellent quality.
Okay. Is there any dark blue in Northern Ireland? No, sadly not.
You have some in the UK. You have some.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few in the south of England. A couple up in Scotland near Edinburgh, but sadly Ireland doesn't have any dark blue. But
you have a very good classical architect in Ireland. I think his name is Conor Lynch.
Okay,
I can send you the link to him, and you can, if you want, you can come in contact with him. And he's an educated classical architect, so he can show you around. Because I think he had commissions, and I think there are at least some new, very, very well done country houses on Ireland.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. There's some people with plenty of money popping around in the Republic of Ireland. But anyway, Michael, unfortunately, I have to run. As I have to go and get dinner with some friends. So, I'll put links for everything in the description below. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. And I really hope that, spread the evangelium. You have the right to your opinions. Your instincts are right. There is objective beauty and there is objective ugliness. And everyone that tries to shut you down, honestly, fuck them.
Well, I love that. I love that attitude to life. So that will definitely resonate with me. But yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.